Reform Factor's live tonight. Protestantism comes to the New World, America, where it erupts in a plethora of small denominations. However, nothing is unifying the movements, and religion becomes very individualistic. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Caution! You're about to enter the no finny zone. The Reform Factor's on tonight. Alrighty, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Reform Factor. I am your host, Peter Birdsall, coming to you live from the courtyard at Reformation Bible College. Today's memo is Protestantism in America. The separatists left the Church of England and sailed to Holland, from which they eventually moved to the New World upon the Mayflower. There, upon landing in Plymouth Rock, they set up a new form of life and church polity, which had a Puritan focus, but with a special emphasis on congregational government. Many groups escaped to the New World, feeling persecuted in the Old, and set up their different religious views. However, due to the individualistic hopes of living in a new world and wanting to overcome what had been done in the Old and creating a new way of life, people became very inward focused and started doing what they wanted to do. Many denominations sprung up, and many manipulative techniques for evangelism took place upon this new soil. Was this a bad thing? We're going to discuss this tonight and find out. Joining me now from the classroom of Reformation Bible College is church scholar Aaron Vogel. Hello, Aaron.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I'm happy to be here with you.
Now, could you please tell us a little bit about the Pilgrims and their settling in the New World? I see you have a map in front of you. I was wondering if you could sketch out where they were and tell us a little bit about the history. What happened there?
Happily, Peter. So, the new Pilgrims coming to America, finding this new land, came in on that guy right there. And they ended up coming from over here and boom, right there. Right in Massachusetts is where they landed. Obviously, the Spanish ended up down here. We'll talk about that later, maybe.
Thank you for that, Aaron. We know there were many reasons for people groups coming to the New World. Pilgrims were religiously oriented, but we know there was other colonies that came more for the economic endeavor. Could you please tell us a little about Jamestown and the special significance of that settlement, and what special characters became Christians through that?
Very good question. So, this was a very Christian-based movement. The Pilgrims came over looking for freedom, obviously. Now down here, a man named John Smith comes to Jamestown, and essentially he wants to take this area. And as you mentioned, I haven't seen the movie in quite a while. However, Pocahontas did become a Christian through this event.
All right, thank you, Aaron. All right, thanks for that, Aaron. We know that about a century or so later, after this point, there was the Great Awakening in America. At the forefront of that was Jonathan Edwards. Could you tell us a little bit about Jonathan Edwards and that movement, and who else joined in?
I will. So, essentially out of New Jersey came this revival, and Edwards was the head of this revival, and Whitefield jumped in with him. And through this revival, many came to faith. However, it was very experiential, this leading to, in the far distance, Pentecostalism. And so, yes, it was very experiential. We'll get to another gentleman who later takes it even further. But Edwards, sure enough, at Princeton, trying to prove a point of how safe medical procedures were, actually ended up dying by smallpox through that.
Thank you for that, Aaron. We know eventually in the American frontier, another awakening came up, the Second Great Awakening. Could you please tell us a little bit about the interesting character of Charles Finney and his revivalist movement located in Kentucky?
Yes, so Charles Finney of Kentucky. Finney. This fellow the one who began the Second Great Awakening was even more so experience-based, and in very, very extreme ways playing off of people's emotions, and this great movement for salvation, which should be good, but it was very, very, very emotions-based, lacking a sort of theology. And one of the things he would do is he'd have a bench for people that feel remorseful, and he would keep it to the side and just do very, very odd things that would have, especially compared to the Catholic Church, would have been very, very wrong, heretical.
Such as manipulating the people to try and get them to make a decision for Christ.
That is right.
Could you please talk about a little bit about just even growing up in that sort of background, how that has affected even the church today? You probably want to be more theologically sound. You mentioned Dwight L. Moody a moment ago. Please tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, so Moody, following Finney, going to Chicago, sadly he plays off of these things in a somewhat similar way. Now he is, I would say, certainly of the two the better. And he had a greater desire for a theological application than Finney would. But nonetheless, of this time, of this culture, Moody was involved. And that was just what was happening. And so he was simply a victim of the revival. A good man, a godly man, yet using unpractical ways.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Vogel.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that, Aaron. Coming up next, interview with church historian Isaac Henderson. He's here to discuss congregationalism. Thank you for joining us, Isaac. Joining us now is church historian Isaac Henderson behind a very cool pillar. Well, thank you for joining us, Isaac.
How you doing, Peter?
Could you please tell us a little bit about the different denominational views that sprang out of this new fertile ground of American Protestantism?
Definitely. Well, as you know me, Peter, I like to start at the beginning. So, as far as church polity goes, in the Catholic Church you've got the ideal version of it's a hierarchy. You've got the Pope at the top, you've got your cardinals, you've got your bishops, you've got your priests, and you all answer to this one man. Where some Catholics would say this, is supported in Scripture, a lot of Protestants took that to the other side and said, no, this is more of a conciliarist idea that the Apostle Paul is presenting in 1st and 2nd Timothy. And so what the Presbyterians did is you have each of your different congregations, and they are all responsible to one body, one presbytery. Notice the word body there. It's not one man, but one body. In America, what started to happen is congregationalism, which actually started out in Britain during the, I want to say the 1600s, during the reign of Charles II, or Charles I actually. You always get those two mixed up. Charles I had caused the Unification Act, and this made separatists, as they were called during the day, very unpopular. And so they retreat to Holland to find a better and more fertile ground for their beliefs. Unfortunately, Holland, Dutch culture like that was very, I want to say licentious, and Puritans did not really appreciate that. So as soon as they get over to the New World, the disjointedness of each congregation made it very difficult to put together a central body. And so the responsibility of each congregation becomes within its own, and theology starts to deteriorate as Methodists come and Anabaptists. Each of these create their own theology with not a whole lot of accountability.
So there's really no visible unity to the body of Christ.
Not a whole lot. And what happens at this point is when people start to lose accountability to the main body, they come up with a whole bunch of crazy ideas. The Pentecostals are a perfect example of this. And no, I'm not flinging mud. But the idea of spiritual gifts and the I suppose you call it the non-cessationalist view that they hold it has no basis in Scripture as far as people at RBC will say, but this view was purely an American ideal that was mostly popularized by Finney and his associates. The premillennialist view, also a result of Finney's theology, and just a whole bunch of really, really diluted theology. People are not as enthusiastic about the church. They're not involving themselves in the work of Christ's body and the work of his church. And so you can see it in America nowadays. The expression, of course, the Bible Belt. That was a direct result of what I like to call hereditary Christianity. It's where you just ride the coattails of your fathers and mothers who've practiced Christianity long before you. A lot of Catholics still do this, and I will admit a lot of Protestants, specifically, Baptists, Southern Baptists, and that kind of stuff down there too.
He didn't go after the presbys. All right, thanks for that, Isaac. Next, we're going to have our Around the Pond discussion. Isaac, myself, and Aaron will discuss the missionary movement and the good that came out of this chaotic Protestant America. All right, let's discuss about the missionary movement that came out of American Protestantism as we walk awkwardly around the pond. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Yep, happy to be here, Peter.
How are you doing, Peter? Are you still in the frame?
I think
Hold on,
so.
wait.
Oh, he's good. He's good.
So, gentlemen, did anything good really come out of this American movement of Protestantism?
Nope, not really.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily nothing. You definitely get. See, I'm not a post mill. Yes, I'm throwing more mud. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with the whole idea of a magisterial reformer.
I'm
like a
myself.
long-term one.
Yeah.
But what a separation of church and state does is it allows the church to be on its own. I mean, during the Reformation and Martin Luther, the magisterial reformers required the state in order for their endeavors to be actually successful. And so, with America now, they are fleeing from the Catholic and the Anglican Church, which are still, I suppose you call it totalitarian over the state and over the church. So
Now, Vogie, is it true that the Protestant movement actually really was not missionary focused in the beginning?
Peter, that is very true. Actually, for years and years, they thought that missions was not necessary because that was a command directly to the apostles, not to the people of today. And that caused a lot of problems. The Catholic outran us in this way for many years, which, again, Catholicism grew in that sense. Protestantism did, but not in the way that it should have. Not that the gospel should have been spread in a much larger way.
So the modern day missionary movement is more of a 19th, 20th century invention, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's a later invention, of course.
So I suppose one good thing came out of American Protestantism, missionary movement just went berserk. Protestants eventually got around to hitting Asia, Africa,
Yep.
India.
Yep.
So many places now have the gospel. So
And I will say with Protestantism in America, there is a lot more freedom, and so there is a lot more resource in order to actually reach these people in different countries. You can see it with the ministries in work today. The fact that we have so much of abundance that we're able to give to others.
Certainly.
The only problem with that abundance is it sometimes breeds, what's the word? Complacency. So
complacency, laziness. So we all in our own personal faith need to be supportive of our local church and of missions. You are either a goer or you are either a sender.
Yep.
There's no other class. Thank you for joining me, gentlemen. All right, thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Reform Factor. I'm your host, Peter Birdsall, in front of the very church doors at Wittenberg where Luther nailed his 95 Theses. Yeah, right. The word of the day is blatherskite. A blatherskite can talk for hours about his sermons and nobody understands a word he says. Have a good rest of your evening.